conditions they are bad, and some of you are sad. You cannot see your enemy, the class that lives in luxury. You working men are poor, will be forevermore. As long as you permit the few to guide your destiny, shall we still be slaves and work for wages? It is outrageous, has been for ages. Oh, this earth by right belongs to toilers and not to spoilers of liberty.
So right now my Twitter's on lock. It should be coming back in a month. But it's at Red Chilean on YouTube, though that's a little more dead.
Yeah.
I've been a little busy, can't record as much.
You have some videos on there though.
Yeah.
Alright.
Some good stuff, I think.
Cool. So Red Chilean on Twitter and on YouTube. Alright.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome everyone to this podcast that I think we're going to be talking. We're going to be calling it Talking Goats. That's kind of the name I came up with like 5 minutes before we started this recording. This podcast is it's kind of about world news in a way. It's not strictly speaking a news podcast. I would like to say that it's going to be a bit more laid back than that, probably a bit more accessible. But yeah, I think we're going to talk about like what's been happening lately, the last week, the last month, maybe. And then we can probably talk about some other stuff. Like today, we're going to be talking about Chile, because we're joined by a Chilean.
Mm.
And you know, that's not... and that's like... That topic is kind of like timeless, because we're not really talking about last week, right? We're talking about decades ago. And
well, last week, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but abortion has been legalized in Chile. It used to be banned. Now it's legalized, so there's your capitalist utopia, you fucking neoliberal shitheads. Abortion's illegal in 2017.
Yeah,
for fuck's sake.
Interesting you kind of say that. It wasn't that long ago in Sweden. It was in 2008 that finally the law was changed so that transsexuality was no longer a mental illness. Because until 2008, it was a mental illness, and you were considered ill if you were transgender, legally speaking.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Yeah, and like that was 2008 in Sweden, and like Sweden is seen as just like the most progressive country in the world, so that's just funny to me. We're behind on certain things, still. But speaking of the podcast, and the world and different countries. What I would really love to do with this podcast is use it as a tool to help people find out more about the world and what it's like to live in different countries. Because I've talked about this before on my YouTube channel and that kind of thing, but whenever like ever since I was like a teenager, basically, ever since like 2012, 2013, Americans have been talking about Sweden as, you know, the rape capital of Europe.
Oh yeah.
And as this you know, immigrant haven, and like there's murders everywhere all the time, and there are zones that the police won't go to, which is completely made up, by the way. And seeing Americans talk about Sweden as if they knew anything about Sweden at all, when in reality they'd never left fucking Arizona, and I never stepped foot in Canada, let alone Europe, let alone Sweden.
Canada, the communist wonderland, with that public healthcare.
They're practically the Soviet Union.
It might as well be.
But yeah, so seeing that and for years, and still seeing it a lot today, you know, because like Trump supporters and stuff like point to Sweden as this like example of badness. Like, this is what happens when you let immigrants in. Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here. I just fucking took the tram from school, and I don't even know. I didn't feel unsafe or anything. Like I went to school, and like I leave my phone, like when I get up from my seat, I like leave my phone and computer like on the desk, because I trust that no one will even attempt to take it, even if I'm sitting next to an evil Muslim immigrant, you know. and at no point during my life have I ever felt threatened.
In a similar,
like, just
go ahead.
No, just period. I've never felt like my life was in danger living in Sweden. Just never in my life.
Yeah, in a similar vein, I have a response to Paul Joseph Watson, a tweet by his, where I believe he points at like Hungary, Chile, and like some other country as model countries. Like he said that there's no Muslims there, therefore there's no terrorism. And God, I don't, like, with the video, it's like I don't know where to begin, because first of all, Chile has the largest Palestinian population outside of the Middle East.
Yeah.
And most of them are Palestinian Christians, so fair enough, they're not Muslim. But like they have a very similar culture, they have very similar norms.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe fair enough, Paul Joseph Watson saying that it's the religion that's radicalizing them. But the thing is, Chile has a big terrorist problem, and it's not coming from any Muslims. It's coming from some bad radical left, some anarchists with particularly shitty theory bombing certain areas. And just a real quick, if there's any anarchists watching this, I have no beef with anarchists. I actually organize with a lot of anarchists locally. It's just that these people in particular, their methods are shit.
Yeah.
And, like there's been some 300 bombs that have gone off since 2010. And it's like pretending that there's no terrorism in Chile is completely fucking ludicrous for anyone that understands anything about Chilean, the terrorism that's there. And it's just ridiculous that these like alt-righter dipshits just lie through their teeth, know nothing about geopolitics or the situation in other countries, and they pretend to understand what happens elsewhere.
Yeah.
And, nobody checks it. Nobody goes and Googles, all right, so Paul Joseph Watson said there's no terrorism in Chile. Is that true? So, like, no one goes look up terrorism in Chile. No one learns about the military school bombing and whatnot. So they stay ignorant and they just keep falling for the same shit over and over again. It's completely infuriating.
Yeah.
And then when you go out and point this out, they just call you like a liberal cuck, and I'm like, dude, I'm a fucking communist.
Oh my god. I still laugh about how the academic agent on Twitter he was I can't even remember what he was talking about. But he was like saying that like socialism goes against human nature or something, like the standard argument. And so I linked him to socialism101.com, right? And
your site.
Yeah, because on the basic page there's like a big paragraph, like there's like a big long text about human nature and what it is, and like why it's wrong to say that human nature means blah 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 system won't work, right? Because human nature changes. And his response to that was "fuck off, cuck."
Oh, there we go.
Like,
so academic, much agent. I don't know.
Academic agent. Yeah. It was just so, like I just, it came so out of nowhere. It was so unexpected. Like I thought he was at least gonna like tell me something about, oh, that's bullshit. Like, oh, you're such a blah blah blah. But he just said "fuck off, cuck," like he had nothing else to say to me.
Like he came at me with he was talking about just Cold War era politics, and he had a video about like how it's all realpolitik or whatever. Like it's like an old term for just saying that nations do what's in their best interest. And he's saying that like I don't even know what his point was. It was like the Soviet Union only supported certain countries because it was in their interest, and the United States only overthrew like the democratically elected leaders because it was in their best interest. Like it's like, yeah, no shit. Doesn't make it any less like that doesn't mean that the like tens of thousands of people that died, like it doesn't make it any better. Like I don't understand what he was trying to say. He's just like, so here's the thing that's like vaguely related to what you're talking about. I'm like, what does this have to do with anything?
So the point I was making earlier about Americans talking about, you know, Sweden and other countries like Chile, like you brought up, is I don't like talking about other countries in that same way. I don't want to be like those annoying Americans that talk about other countries as if they know shit about those countries, right? If I'm going to talk about another country, I want to make damn sure that I know what I'm talking about. I want to have talked to people from that country. I want to have read up about the specific thing I'm talking about. Preferably, I want to have visited that country, lived in that country for a while, before I start, you know, blabbing and then saying a bunch of bullshit that's most likely wrong.
Making a fool out of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I'm afraid of like people pointing out, oh, this is wrong. It's just that I know what it feels like to be from a country and hearing someone not from your country talk about what it's like for you. It's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating to hear that. But yeah, that's bringing it back to what we talked about a while ago. That's kind of why I want lots of guests on this podcast from different corners of the world. I would love guests from countries that I haven't been to, guests from different regions in China, in mainland China and Japan, but also other South American countries like Bolivia. There is I know some people from Cuba who live here in Gothenburg, and I would love to make a podcast with them as well. And people from Western Africa as well is a very interesting region right now, like West Sahara, and you know, possibly the United States as well, but
nah.
But
it's not great here.
To me, I find it very interesting to hear about what is going on in X country. Like, what's going on in Luxembourg right now? Like, what's
not
happening?
Much. It's very small.
Yeah, but I'm sure something's happening.
Yeah, I'm sure some sheep are fucking or something like that.
I don't know if Luxembourg has sheep.
I mean, that's in Europe. They gotta have sheep, right?
That's true. Most European countries have sheep.
I mean, maybe they're small enough where like the sheep are just like all in Germany or something.
Now, okay, let's just cover this really quickly. This podcast hopefully is going to come out about once every 2 weeks. School is starting, and then this is actually the last year of sixth form, essentially the equivalent of for me, and so it's going to be very stressful, and so can't guarantee that it will be out every 2 weeks. It may be it may be a bit more apart than that. Hopefully, I'm aiming for every 2 weeks. And this podcast will be available to listen to on my YouTube channel, azureScapegoat. It will be available on iTunes under searching for Talking Goats. It will be available on all kinds of different podcasting website, like I don't even know what they're all called. Pod, feed, because they're all added to all of those automatically.
You can find it at your local kiosk now.
Yeah.
Or whenever it comes out.
Yeah. You just go into the grocery store and there's like a DVD, but it's only audio of this podcast. So yeah, that's definitely going to be available everywhere in the world. No, but seriously, just whatever podcasting website or app that you're using, it will show up there, because all podcasts end up there automatically, because I'm going to create an RSS feed and upload that, and yeah, it will work out. Whatever you use to listen podcasts, like whatever you usually use to listen to podcasts with, that will work.
Actually, hopefully. Fuck that shit. Watch it on the YouTube and give him some ad revenue, because that's worth a lot nowadays.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of my videos have been demonetized for being political.
I've never ran ads. The only video I have ads on is because I used an excerpt of a Vice documentary, and my ads are going to them, which I don't particularly mind. I just tell my viewers to run an ad blocker.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything against viewers using ad block. Like if they don't want to see ads on my videos, I have nothing against them at all. I don't like to see ads. Since I started making YouTube videos and since I started making money from YouTube videos, I have completely disabled ad block on all of YouTube. So I do watch the ads on all YouTube videos that I watch.
For the videos I watch, I know that the ads are giving them basically no money, so there's no point.
Yeah.
Which a lot of gaming stuff, a lot of political stuff, that stuff, the ad revenue is not there. So you just run a blocker.
Yeah.
If there's a guy I like, they probably have a Patreon. I'll donate something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I basically make. I think I checked, and I think I made 2 cents in total this month from all of my videos combined. So, and I used to make like $80 a month from my videos before they were demonetized. Now I make 2 cents a month. So fantastic. I don't make any money. But it's fine. It's okay. In Sweden we get a student's allowance, which is
that's nice.
It's 1,000 crowns a month. It's not a lot. It's what is it, £100? It's less than $100.
Man, don't complain.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that it's literally impossible to live off of that. Like, you can buy some Subway sandwiches for it, like, but like. It's not something you can pay rent with, which is why I still live with my parents, because I literally cannot afford to move out.
Hey man, that's the life. That's me right now.
Yeah, that's pretty much true for all millennials, essentially. This entire generation.
We're not millennials, fool. We're Generation Z.
I don't know what generation we are, man.
This matters, okay? This is important.
Fucking everyone is a millennial now, apparently.
Yeah, millennials are anything that's bad, I guess.
Yeah.
It's kind of how it feels.
Dude, millennials are ruining the diamond market. They're not buying jewelry.
Millennials are ruining communism. It's great. Wait, not communism. Excuse me, capitalism.
Millennials are a lot more radicalized these days than they used to be.
That's true.
Because just to get a quick idea of what it's like, if you go on Wikipedia and go to basically any country that there is. Look on the side. I'm not telling you to do this. I'm just telling the viewers to do this. And in the sidebar, there is a link that says like Legislative Assembly, right? You click on that, and it will take you to like the Parliament.
I've done this so much.
Yeah, I do it all the time. It takes you to like the Parliament of that country, and it shows you which political parties. It's a nice little graphic image, right? Of like a half circle with like all the different seats and all the different parties, how many seats each party has. You can get a pretty nice look of which party is popular in which country, like which party has power. So it's just nice to do that. But if you go to any one of those parties, but especially the leftist ones, like the social democratic ones, go click on that again for basically any country that there is. Go on that, then in the sidebar for that social democratic party, look at their youth wing. Most parties have youth wings.
I haven't done this.
You should do it.
I haven't done that far yet. I want to do this real quick.
If you look at the youth wing of pretty much any major social democratic party at least in Europe, but I think for most countries, if you look at the ideology section of that youth wing, it's usually socialism, democratic socialism. In some cases, it's revolutionary socialism. I believe the youth wing of I can't remember if it's the Social Democratic Party or if it's like the revisionist socialist-ish party, but one of those, the youth wing of which is revolutionary socialist.
Nice.
Whereas the mother party is like standard parliamentary, boring reform socialism.
The kind that doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. But so in Sweden, for example, Social Democratic Party, Social Democratic, right? Youth wing, Democratic Socialist. So one step to the left, right? The left party, Socialist, right? Youth wing, Marxist. So it's like the youth wing is always one step to the left. And also, if you look at the youth wing of right-wing parties, the youth wing is usually one step to the right. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. But it's that's a good way to get like an overview of what's happening. The youths are getting more radicalized. And I think it's kind of always been that way. But I think it's even more so today. Like communism is having a revival in today's...
For sure.
Yeah. Sweden is a bit different because we actually had a communist party for a long time who were in parliament. So communism used to be more popular before the 90s. But it took like a downturn. Like communism kind of went down in popularity for a while in the 90s and early 2000s, but now since 2008 it has been going up. Like the Communist Party and the youth wing of the Communist Party have been getting a lot more members.
In Chile, the guy that's probably gonna win is gonna be a right wing like shithead that was like in deep with Pinochet. He was like he kind of introduced credit cards and debit cards to Chile.
Oh, okay.
And made a lot of money out of that. And now he's like one of the wealthiest in Chile, and he's a prominent politician.
Yeah.
He's loved by the right and hated by the left.
Yeah.
This would be his second term. He had a really bad first term. People didn't like him much, but the quote-unquote left-wing party candidate, like it's very similar to the States where you have, rather than just having two parties, you have two coalitions made up of smaller parties.
Yeah.
And the candidate that the left-wing coalition chose is very liberal, very, what's it called? Lukewarm, and it's hard to get excited for him.
Like centrist.
I mean, no, he's a social democrat-ish, like with a lot of liberal politics. He's not great. Not a fan.
Kind of Bernie-ish, or like maybe even to the right of Bernie.
To the right of Bernie, which is disappointing for a country that with a very rich leftist history.
Yeah. And I suppose we can talk about that a little bit, about the history of Chile. I'm not all too familiar. I know of Allende and I know of Pinochet, but how was the leftist movement before Allende?
I'm not the most familiar. However, I know that I know the songs of what's her name? This woman who was killed at a protest. There is a brigade, a Chilean brigade, part of the armed group of the Communist Party, that is dedicated to her. I think that's been dismantled since, but she's very famous. So famous that I forgot her name.
Okay.
And actually, like Chile was a straight up socialist republic, not like under Allende. Like it was like it had a socialist government and all that for a very brief period of time, from June 4th to September 13 in 1932, because of certain political instability.
Okay.
It was a very unstable period in Chilean history, and the government was switching like every few months.
Yeah.
But for a brief period, there was a socialist takeover of the government.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now Allende, he was elected in 74.
No, in 1970. In 74, he was already dead.
Oh, when was this?
He was elected 1970.
1970. Okay. And he was president for 3 years, 2 years.
Yeah, for 3 years.
Okay. Why don't you talk a bit about him? What was he? I mean, I'm pretty sure you weren't alive, but I'm sure your parents were.
My parents were actually afterwards. My parents are quite young. I have an uncle who was a member of the Communist Party who supported him quite a bit, and was under threat during the dictatorship. But we'll get into that. I believe my grandfather supported him. On my mom's side, my grandfather actually on my dad's side was a big supporter of his. He was in the Radical Party, which is a social democrat party. However, it was quite radicalized during the time of Allende. They were one of the biggest supporters of his campaign.
Okay.
So much so that they actually had a splinter group come out of the Radical Party called the Radical Left Party, which was an actual like revolutionary party.
Okay.
With some really cool politics. Do you want me to touch on like do you want like specifically like the economic stuff that Allende did, or anything else in particular?
Well, first of all, what was what kind of leftist was Allende? Was he like a full out Fidel Castro of Chile, or was he, more of a democratic socialist? Or
he was certainly a democratic socialist, but he had Marxist politics and Marxist like ideas. The only issue with that is that he was trying to fit it into a democratic, like trying to work within democratic liberal democracy. Similar, he's very similar to Hugo Chavez and Maduro to some extent in that way. Though I think Chavez was like very pushed into the limelight without really expecting it. So Allende was already better educated, at least as far as the radical politics went.
Okay.
His campaign, maybe I should specifically talk about the economics. His economics were very similar to that of the Soviet Union, with a centrally planned economy and trying to do a big effort to collectivize. The problem is that he had a big opposition in the government, which is why perhaps calling him a Marxist is misleading, because you can't instate the kind of policies that Marxists want to pass if you're working within the liberal democracy, because at some extent you can be blocked. We've seen that in Venezuela and we saw that in Chile.
Mm. And it's also easier for foreign entities like the United States to influence politics in a liberal democracy. It's very easy for the United States to support a certain political party, support the opposition, and that kind of thing.
They did that a lot, and even then the support for Allende was so overwhelming that although the opposition's numbers grew, essentially there was we had like the midterms essentially 2 years after his election, and rather than the opposition expected to grow in numbers and to have a majority large enough to block more stuff, which they did get. However, the power that the Socialist Party held in Congress actually grew. So both the opposition and the leftist coalition both grew, and pushing out the more independent and the less committed groups. So you had essentially politics polarized quite a bit during this time. So it was very frustrating on both ends that neither one could really do what they wanted to do. It was just trying to block each other constantly.
Yeah, that happens in a lot of countries when there is a kind of in more turbulent times, more political restlessness. When it starts getting serious, essentially, a lot of people stop voting for smaller parties, and it becomes a two-party system for a while. We are seeing that in Sweden at the moment, because a lot of people are abandoning the centrist parties and the far left party in favor of the Social Democrats versus the far right party. And so it's kind of becoming this two big blobs. The Social Democratic Party in Sweden is monstrously big. If Sweden has a system called the St. Leg method or the Webster method, which essentially what it does, it's designed to not be completely 100% proportional. Like, if the Social Democrats get 55% of the vote, they don't get 55% of the seats. Rather, some of the seats of the biggest parties are given to the smaller parties, just so that they have some influence. Even though the left party might have 8% of the votes. No, they have more than that, I think. Let's say they have 16% of the votes. They might get 20% of the seats. And those extra seats are taken from the biggest party, which is the Social Democratic, but also the moderate party, which is the second biggest party.
Wait, is that the name? The Moderate Party?
Yep, it's literally called the Moderate Party.
Wow. That is disgusting.
They're liberal conservatives. So if we didn't have that system where the seats are kind of spread more evenly, the Social Democrats would make up a big majority in the parliament. And they would essentially be able to do whatever the fuck they want to because they have a majority. And so there is only one coalition in Sweden, and it's like, how many political parties is it now? It's 4 different political parties are in a coalition. The only coalition in Sweden is called the Alliance, and it's the 4 right-wing parties, like the moderates, the Center Party, the Liberals, and the Christian Democrats. And all of them together do not beat the Social Democrats, which is very funny to me. I don't like the Social Democrats very much, but it's almost shocking how popular they are. Like all other political parties combined are more popular than the Social Democratic Party. And it's been that way for practically not 100 years, 90 years, since like 1920.
Since near the end of the First World War.
Yeah, the Social Democrats have been the biggest party ever since then. The coalition, like the Alliance, have been bigger a couple of times, but that's all of them together. The Moderate Party, which is the second largest party, has never been more popular than the Social Democrats. It's just the Alliance, the coalition, all like combined, have sometimes managed to get more votes. And Sweden actually doesn't have a term limit for prime ministers.
Interesting.
So essentially what happens is, after an election, the opposition can, if they want to, they don't have to, but if they want to, they can declare, what would be an accurate translation, mistrust for the government, or mistrust for the prime minister. And if a majority in parliament votes to get rid of the old prime minister, then a new one can be elected. But if the prime minister is continually re-elected, he can sit for as long as he wants. We once had a prime minister for, I think it was 23 years. Tage Erlander was his name. He was a social democrat, and he was, I think it was 23 years. It was over 20 years. And that's 4 or 5 elections.
Mm-hmm. So, you hear that? But Venezuela is still a dictatorship.
Yeah. The same with Fidel Castro in Cuba. He wasn't president for that much longer than Tage Erlander in Sweden. What
frustrates me with liberal and conservative types is that they don't understand that Castro is closer to a political figure like John F. Kennedy rather than someone who has continually held power.
Now, I mean, I like term limits, and I probably would want term limits in Cuba as well. But I should probably talk to a Cuban about that. Ask what they think. But we're not talking about Cuba right now. We're still talking about Chile, or we're supposed to.
Are we? Doesn't feel like it. It's cool. Just throw some shade. I mean, like, I'm not the most well-read or researched on Allende. What actually intrigues me a lot more is the militant opposition to Pinochet during his time. That's what I've done most of my research on.
Okay.
Or in my free time.
We can talk about that. Give a little background. Who was Pinochet?
Well, Pinochet was like one of the biggest sacks of shit that's ever existed in the face of the earth. If that doesn't make it clear, then I guess I can elaborate. He was a U.S.-backed dictator in Chile who arrested and tortured 40,000 Chilean people, and I believe 4,000 of them either disappeared or have been confirmed dead. Mm-hmm. By the way, for the uninitiated, when you disappear in these dictatorships, it means that you're probably at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. They throw you out of a helicopter. It's fun.
Lots of right wingers make memes about that. about throwing communists out of helicopters. And I mean, it's not like it's offensive. It's just a bit like, do they know where that comes from? Like,
I'm pretty sure they do. This is what I tell them. I'll hug them on the way down. I'm taking you with me, man. Yeah. Sorry.
Because it's just interesting that a lot of these right wingers are like, communists want a dictatorship. We need to throw them out of helicopters. You know, that throwing out of helicopter thing comes from a dictator, like an actual. Well, would you call him a fascist? I guess that's my question.
A lot of people do. I don't think it's accurate. Mm-hmm. I do distinguish between, like, he's not like a totalitarian like asshole, but I think his politics was distinctly different from someone like Hitler or even Franco. Though they were very, Franco and him were very tight. You know, they were close friends. I think there's a distinct difference between fascism tends to try to look at the old in order to revitalize capitalism. Mm-hmm. Pinochet was in an interesting point in time where neoliberalism was really like it was a very new thing and it was coming up, and he was a key figure in the whole thing. So Chile was essentially an experimental area to see how like neoliberalism at its extreme, like, you know, with like the most Austrian takes on fucking everything. You know, you had Hayek and Milton Friedman and Mises just, you know, running amok all over the Chilean economy.
So what you're saying is it was anarcho-capitalist utopia.
I mean, if you want to establish anarcho-capitalism, you need to do what Pinochet did. Like that's just the reality. Perhaps, I guess, if you're a purist, you could do it in a decentralized way. I don't think it's possible. But, I mean, I don't really want to sit here and be like, okay, so how do we establish anarcho-capitalism? Because that's not what I want to do with my time.
That's for the next podcast.
Well, yeah. So he killed a lot of people, and actually, particularly during his first economic policy, drawn by the Chicago Boys, which were some Chilean economists that had studied at the Chicago School of Economics. They implemented this program called Shock, and the idea was to deregulate everything, rip everything away from the unions, destroy any collectivization that had happened, and destroy any infrastructure laid down by central planning, and just let shit figure itself out. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of selling of public industry to banks. There was like some two bank firms and some more centralized industry.
Yeah,
there was a lot of state repression on unions and striking and stuff like that. There were still strikes, and a lot of them were allowed to happen because you still want some level of stability. You know, if you keep cracking down on it, you're gonna end up with a civil fucking war, and you know nobody wants that. He did have opposition actually in the government, particularly from the Air Force, I believe it was. So there was like, you know, his position wasn't too secure until a little later, which is why although the earliest year were the harshest economically, people still have a bit more political freedom. As far as the militant opposition went during this time, closer to the south. Now we're getting a bit into the 80s.
Okay.
In the Valparaiso zone, there was a guerrilla group called the MIR, M-I-R, which is the Movement for Radical Leftist.
Oh, yeah, I know about them.
Would be the translation. And they essentially tried to do with M267, which was a Castro-Che movement in Cuba. They tried to do that in Chile. And they had some success, but dictatorships and U.S.-backed puppets had to learn a lot from Cuba at this point, and also Chile's not cut off as much from the rest of the world as Cuba is. It's not an island.
Yeah.
So they had some success, but essentially all the support that they had in the cities and was torn away, and they were cut off, and strategies similar to the Guatemalan genocide were implemented in order to push them out. It wasn't quite as brutal, but yeah, there was a lot of repression to the area around, and essentially the front died off because it just couldn't sustain itself, and a lot of members escaped the country, and they would later come back to form the FPMR, which is the Patriotic Front of Manuel Rodriguez, This time with supply with weapons supplied from the Soviet Union and a lot of ammunition and a lot of political and also economic support from Cuba.
Okay.
And they put a real dent into Augusto. They almost killed him in one assassination attempt. There was a lot of bombings. There was a lot of that kind of stuff. So they didn't quite succeed in overthrowing him insurrectionally, but they did have a lot of success.
Now, Pinochet, at the end, he died of old age, didn't he?
Yes, in 2006, 2009. I'm not entirely sure.
How long was he the dictator of Chile?
17 years. It was from 73 to 1990, so that's 23 years.
What happened in 1990?
There was a referendum. There were two referendums, I think. I'm not 100% on this. This is what my father told me when I was a lot younger, so this could be inaccurate. I haven't researched this as much because it just doesn't interest me.
Okay.
As much as the armed opposition and whatnot. But what I do believe happened is, actually, I believe there was a referendum essentially every single time, corresponding with the foreign political model, except that the only option was: do you want Pinochet to stay as a president, or should we hold elections? And if you voted to hold elections, this didn't always happen, but there would be, like, if in a certain area there's a lot of we should hold an election, there would be repression there, and there was you couldn't have a campaign in order to push for a return to elections. If you did that, you would be killed. And in the referendum before the one that succeeded, there was, I believe, a campaign, and there was a campaign video that was put out, and the director disappeared, and a lot of the people in the production and the filming and all that were threatened by the government, and a few also disappeared.
Jeez. It must have been a big change to go from an authoritarian dictatorship under Pinochet to free elections.
It actually wasn't, because the election system was still in place. People, obviously not as many people went out to vote for these elections because people knew they were a sham, but you still had to, go out and vote. Do we want to keep Pinochet or not? Some people still did. It's whatever. They're going to do what they're going to do.
But I mean, after Pinochet stepped down.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the political... When Pinochet came into power, he had full power to rewrite the whole constitution, to rewrite the whole inner working of the political system. Since the return to democracy, the country is still functioning in the regular liberal democratic sense, where you have to have a majority in order to rewrite the constitution. So we've been stuck with a lot of Pinochet policies. In particular, the education system is still completely privatized.
Okay.
It's not. There are public schools, but they're awful. They have no funding. The one that has been passed, which is decently good, it's better than the States at least, is healthcare. Healthcare is decent in Chile.
Okay, that's nice.
I mean, a lot of aspects of life are completely privatized. Transportation is quite privatized, so there's not much development there. As I said, education. And particularly the law to how to handle terrorists in particular has yet to be updated. So it's just a mess. The whole way that the whole system is built up so that if there's somebody who threatens the government, you just kill them. But you don't want to do that anymore, at least. And also immigration. We're still stuck in a very closed immigration system, which is quite terrible because of there's been a lot of immigration coming in from Bolivia, coming in from Peru, coming in from Colombia. People who come looking for work, and they're illegal. They're considered illegal, so they have a lot of problems similar to what the United States has.
Yeah.
Yet it's not. It's really frustrating because these people, Chile has a economic issue of the hard labor class so much is slowly fading away. You can see something very similar in Japan, just much further down the road. And so we could very greatly benefit from these people. And I'm not saying that, we should let them in because they'll benefit Chile economically. We should let them in because they're people and they have fucking rights. But even to the cynical right-wing assholes, like this is a good decision. We should be letting these people in, but they just don't let them in because they're xenophobic.
Yeah. Something I was thinking about earlier when you were talking about the privatization of everything in Chile.
Mm-hmm.
Under Batista in Cuba, I think one of, if not the biggest industry was prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a thing in Chile as well?
In this sense, I guess you could call Pinochet quite fascistic because he had a lot of stuff. A lot of the law was based on Catholic conservative values, just to give us some sense of legitimacy and to draw some support from. Try to not have all the, because people understood that he was backed by the CIA. People understood that the United States was behind it all.
Yeah.
In order to try to develop a bigger base of support, he would draw from the Catholic Church. And for that there was sense. A lot of very regressive politics, and this actually touches in what I mentioned earlier, that abortion has only been legalized this year in Chile.
Yeah,
that is a leftover from the Pinochet era.
Okay, so you're kind of still feeling the effects.
Oh, very much so.
Okay.
Chile politically is very much still tied to the Pinochet regime.
Interesting. See, because I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have guessed that after Pinochet there would have been this complete, rebuilding of society.
You would think so. You would think so.
Yeah.
We have less political repression in the sense that if you make a critique of the government, they might not come knocking on your door and sending you to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
But push hard enough and they push back.
Yeah.
For example, the First Nations in Chile, the Mapuche in particular, who are quite militant and very prideful people, rightfully so. They were never conquered by the Spanish. They've been fighting for the lands for forever now, and since 2007, I believe 10 of them have died in clashes with the police, and many have been jailed.
Riots, we see a lot of riots in America, and in France as well. Protesters clashing with the police. There was a video that was circling around Twitter a couple of days ago where the police in full, riot gear with shields and armor, they threw a tear gas canister toward the protesters, and one of them kicked it back to them.
Yeah.
And he was shot with a rubber bullet for that, for kicking back the tear gas that they threw at him. Does that kind of stuff happen in Chile? Are there like police?
Yeah, Chile is quite. I mean, you could say infamous. I would say famous. I would say straight up famous for its riots in Latin America.
Okay.
In September 11, which is 9/11, is the day of the coup, the day that Allende died. There is always riots every single year, and the police, they are often come in riot gear. They have rubber bullets. They have tear gas. They have they're not tanks. They're ATVs, I think they're called.
Yeah.
With
like armored
with
cars,
water hoses. Yeah, just armored vehicles with water hoses at the top, and they try to spray people down. And we constantly take this down with Molotov cocktails and just barricades, trying to wall them off on both sides.
Yeah.
Just throwing rocks to the police and whatnot. But yeah, this is a very common thing in Chile. You have riots constantly happening.
See that is so foreign to me, because I've never seen that kind of clash with the police. Like even when I've been abroad, I've been quite lucky that I've never encountered that kind of stuff. But in Sweden, like the most I have seen is like police horses, police riding on horses to disperse crowds.
Oh yeah, that's very, very common in Chile.
Yeah, I've seen that twice in my life. And both times in Gothenburg, which is the second largest city in Sweden. So it's not that crazy that it happens here sometimes.
The first time I got tear gassed, I believe I forget I don't know what my age was. I was a baby. My mom was taking me in a stroller through the university, and a riot just broke out.
Wow.
And the tear gas rolled out because they have on-campus security. Well, no, not security. They have a police station on campus.
Oh, okay.
With riot gear storage. They're just ready to go. And I mean, this is constantly vandalized. This is constantly broken into, and constantly like stolen.
Yeah.
Stuff's constantly stolen from there, and they just keep filling it back up rather than just rather than using the money that they keep pumping into the police system, rather than using that to give better education, give better, like, lower the tuition rates or whatever. They just keep pumping it into the police stations to just throwing away money. Might as well be pissing it away.
Yeah, we I'm assuming your police are armed, like they have guns.
Yes.
Do they also have like shotguns or whatever in the cars, in the police cars, in the trunk?
There's a famous video in Chile of a Mapuche woman who had a baby. She was holding a baby, and this was in a field, and she's trying to like get away from this police officer. And with a baby in her fucking arms, the police officer like points the shotgun at her and pumps it, just like and you can see like absolutely terrible trigger discipline. He's like ready to shoot her. Like, and this is a completely unarmed woman holding a baby.
It's just like I keep saying it, but it's so foreign. It's such a different world from what I know, which is like why I really like that I'm doing this podcast, because I want to talk to more people from other parts of the world, because there are such big differences politically, but also at the same time, I mean, it's an obvious statement, but we're all still people, we all basically want the same things.
Communism.
Exactly. Fully automated luxury gay-space communism. No, in Sweden, the police do not carry guns at all. They have a baton, they have pepper spray, which they rarely use, and they have a gun, I believe it's just a pistol, that is locked in a trunk in the car. And if they want to use it, they have to go to the car, unlock it, and they have to call their police station, call their chief and say, I'm getting the gun out because I need it. So they don't have it on their belt. They don't have it like readily accessible so they can just whip it out and shoot someone like that. But rather they can go get it if they need it for serious situations.
And I assume like there's a level of like the due process has like some flexibility. Like if people are getting, like, let's say there's a terrorist attack similar to like that of San Bernardino, like, which is that's like in Sweden, the antagonisms there, particularly to Muslim people, I assume aren't as bad. But if something like that happens, actually this has happened in Sweden. It was actually with like far right people. I remember there was a far right shooting at a school. In a situation like that, do they still have to like call up the police station, or can they just go in?
They can, I believe, in that kind of situation, they would just radio it in. They would just like, I'm getting the guns out, like really quickly.
Okay, that's understandable.
But yeah, I believe we had a school shooting. I
might have been thinking of Norway actually.
Yeah. No, we had one as well 2 or 3 years ago was the last one, I think. But it actually wasn't a shooting. It was some far-right Nazi idiot who brought a fucking katana to school.
What the fuck?
I mean, I laugh about it, but I think one person died, maybe 2 people died.
God damn it.
Like he was just the standard neckbeard weeaboo, but he just fucking killed people with a real katana that he probably bought from an online store or some shit.
Jesus.
Hey, he just went to his school and I think he wanted to kill his teacher. I can't remember now. It was a while ago. But yeah, that was in the headlines for a long time. Also, we had the terrorist attack in Stockholm with a guy who rammed a truck into people.
I heard about that.
Yeah, that was pretty recently. That's like the first time we've ever had that kind of attack. I mean, luckily it wasn't as bad as it has been in other countries. Still scary. But the majority of terrorist attacks in Sweden are by right-wingers and like
I mean, that's true. That's true of the States as well. It's just that nobody reports this. They just nobody ever reports the right wing, like the bombing of like an abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. But they do report a Muslim.
Yeah, it's
whenever it happens.
Most of the time, it's right wing. I mean, I'm gonna call them right wing terrorists because that's literally what they are. It's them setting fire to refugee camps and like the camps where refugees go before they're like processed and can move into like an actual city.
So people can actually just go fucking die.
Mm-hmm. And like those camps are filled with children and children and babies and single mothers who fled from war. Like from a war-torn region. They fled from like Syria, they fled from Iraq, from ISIS. They fled from...
I can't fucking handle that shit.
They fled from ISIS, the fucking far-right fascist Muslim Islamist group in the Middle East, only to be, attacked by other far-rightists in Sweden.
That shit kills me because like Sweden actually accepted a lot of Chilean refugees during the Pinochet era.
Yeah.
So I'm like... The same kind of shit happened back then. Maybe, probably to a lesser extent, because we look pretty white, generally speaking.
Mm. We actually still have a large number of people descendant from Chileans.
Mm-hmm.
I think just looking at like demographics of Sweden, seeing like what kind of heritage people have, like Chile is up there. It's like one of the biggest. And most people are either like Norwegian or Finnish. Like Finland is at the top, like undisputed, always at the top. Like it's absolutely crazy how many Finnish people we have in Sweden. Like
it seems pretty natural. It's right over.
It is right over. Also, we have a very long history together. Like Finland was part of Sweden for a very very long time, like hundreds of years. And there are a lot of Swedish. People in Finland who speak Swedish, like they're brought up speaking Swedish and like it's their mother tongue. Many of them don't even speak Finnish at all, and so Finland has like special minority rights for people who speak Swedish in Finland. And like there's a political party in Finland called the Swedish People's Party, which is like a Swedish minority interests party. And like they offer education and everything. Like Swedish is an officially recognized minority language in Finland. And I think... No, we don't recognize Finnish as a minority language, but we recognize meänkieli, which is kind of Finnish. Alright, we thank Red Chilean for joining us today. That was a very interesting conversation. Very happy that I got to talk to him. He's been on the azureScapegoat Discord channel a lot. He's been tweeting me and that kind of stuff. So when I said that I wanted to make a podcast, he was the first person to be like, "Hey, do you want me to be on your podcast? Like we can talk about stuff." Yeah, Chile sure is interesting. I definitely never would have guessed that Pinochet still had, influence, or like what he did still affects Chile today. That's, pretty crazy. So, this podcast most likely will not make any kind of money on its own. I will be uploading it to YouTube so that there will be ads on it, but it wouldn't surprise me if the podcast was demonetized or it was deemed not advertiser friendly, and so I would not actually be making money off of them. So I am going to be implementing a donation system where if you feel like this podcast is worth it. If you like this podcast, if you want to listen to this podcast, if you want me to be able to make more of these, then you can donate to the podcast however much you want to donate. What I will do is, if you donate, I'll just say if you donate $1 or more, I will give you a little shout out. I will, say your Twitter name. I will say this person donated this amount of money, and I will also read, a short message. If you have a message that you want me to read on this podcast, or if there's something that you want me to talk about on this podcast, then I will do so for money. And I did actually get a donation earlier, even before the podcast even started, from Twitter user LeoTro1, called Lion and the Fox, who donated €2. And thank you very much for that. Genuinely and sincerely, very much for donating. It's gonna help pay for hosting this podcast, because I need to pay for a server on which I can place all of the sound files, so that I can then create links to them and then create an RSS feed so that the podcast actually goes out to everyone. And if the podcast kind of helps me stay alive without having to get another job on the side, because I'm a student right now, and as I said before, we have a student allowance. It's not much, but it's something. And if I don't have to get a job on the side as well, and I can do this podcast instead, that would be very nice. That would be pretty cool, and I would be able to make more podcasts, and I would be able to make more videos as well on my YouTube channel, azureScapegoat. If you haven't watched any of my videos, then maybe you should. I make YouTube videos, if you didn't know. Yes. So, if you would like to donate, you can go to socialism101.com and you can click on the donate button. And that will take you to a page on which you can send me money. And it will be sent via PayPal, but you can just use a credit card if you have that instead. Or a card that's linked to your bank account or whatever. The standard methods of paying. If you don't want to donate, if you don't have the money to donate, that's completely understandable, and I don't mind at all. I still appreciate you very much for just listening. If you want to, show your appreciation in some other way, you can always follow me on Twitter. I'm at Miosiden, Miosiden. Or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and that kind of thing. Just let me know how I'm doing. Let me know what I can improve. Tell me what you like about this podcast. Tell me what you don't like. Tell me what I should change. If you like this podcast and you would like to be notified every time that a new podcast episode comes up, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's one way to do it. You can also subscribe to the RSS feed if you use an RSS reader, because that will then give you a notification every time there's a new podcast added to the RSS feed. Also, of course, you can use iTunes and subscribe to the podcast on there, or you can use some other kind of podcasting platform, which allows you to subscribe. I myself use an app called Gpodder, which is, it exists both on Android. I don't know if it's on iPhone. It's both on Android and on Linux. And because I use Linux, and I use Gpodder on Linux to listen to podcasts, and they also had an app on Android, so I thought, well, I might as well get the same thing on my computer as on my phone. So that's what I use, and that works fine. You just have to copy the RSS feed and paste it into the app, and boom, there you have it. All the podcast episodes, and you can download them to listen on the go, or just stream them. It's a very simple app. I like it. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. Just that's it, I believe. Thank you for listening.